Cool. That's probably good, guys. Let's get us kicked off. So, welcome everybody to the first space of Moonwell Radio. We're talking simplifying on-chain finance with Luke Youngblood, real name, right, of Moonwell, and Armand Khatri of Base. So, I'm Cool Horse Girl. I'm a Moonwell delegate, so I'm so excited to have this chat with you guys. We're gonna cover what the future of on-chain finance means to Moonwell and Base, so you get like both, and some general comments too that I really think apply as I'm reading this sort of like outline, like apply beyond any kind of sales pitch. It's good stuff. So, Luke, why don't you kick us off? Give us a bit of an intro about you and about Moonwell.
Thanks, Cool Horse Girl. It's great to be here. My name's Luke. So just by way of background, I spent the last several years working in crypto. I used to work at Coinbase before I left to start Moonwell. And the company I work for is a founding contributor to the Moonwell protocol. And Moonwell is an open, decentralized lending and borrowing protocol. We're live on Base, Moonbeam, and Moonriver today. And very simply, we just allow you to borrow against crypto. So if you have digital assets, you can lend them, you can borrow them. We try to make it as easy as possible and as frictionless as possible. And we're really excited about being live on Base since day one and being one of the Genesis builders in the Base ecosystem. So really excited to just talk to you about on-chain finance today and talk a little bit about where we're going from here. Exciting to be here.
Excited to have you. Yeah, Armand, tell us about you and Base.
Absolutely. So, first of all, let me just say that I'm thrilled to be on Moonwell Radio episode one. That feels like quite the accomplishment.
It is. It is.
So, yeah, really happy to be speaking with you, Cool Horse Girl, and of course to be speaking with Luke and team at Moonwell. So yeah, we've been so lucky to have y'all building on base from the very beginning. And my background, I joined Coinbase about a year and a half ago on the Coinbase Cloud team. That's like the former Bison Trails team. Was working on some like larger scale cloud projects. Quite a few of those went live, and we're doing interesting things on that side. But I got involved with a special project, and that was essentially Coinbase on-chain part two, which quickly and in its own little ebbing and flowing led to the base initiative, which is obviously led by Jesse and internally. So was very lucky to you know, wind up on the special project of base, get back to my roots of what attracted me on chain to begin with, which is DeFi. And now I have a chance to, call myself a DeFi lead, the on-chain finance lead at Base. So a little bit more background of Base for those who are not familiar. But Base is very simply an ETH layer two. It's built to help scale Ethereum, and it is powered by the OP stack. So we were able to use the open source Optimism stack to actually, release base in a much more quickly and efficiently than if we had to build a net new stack on our own. And by being the first layer two within the OP stack, we sort of worked together with the Optimism team to help reconfigure how folks think about optimism in the OP stack. It's not just its own layer two mainnet, but now it's a modular blockchain. Um, Base is obviously incubated by Coinbase, but it is still very much so open source and permissionless, which is pretty incredible. And I think one of the big joys of what we're doing with Base that a lot of folks maybe take for granted or don't necessarily like look into as much is that now you have the full sort of like engineering prowess of the Coinbase broader team contributing to OpenStack, open source rather, public goods. So everything that our team, my colleagues, myself, everything that we're contributing to Base is now all living as part of the open source OP stack and contributing to the broader on-chain economy.
That's so cool. It's so crazy how different it is from years ago. Okay, so let's keep in mind we're talking about simplifying on-chain finance. We got to do this to onboard the next billion users, right? Part of this is fostering this economic freedom globally. So I'll do a bit of an intro to Coinbase's secret master plan, right? Armand, correct me if I'm misled on any of this. So for those of you who don't know, Coinbase's secret master plan was published in 2016, so ages ago, right? By Brian Armstrong, Coinbase CEO, co-founder. But it's about creating an open financial system for the world. So it's sort of like a step-by-step, like progressive plan in how Coinbase is going to do this. The points are like economic freedom, innovation, efficiency, equality of opportunity. It's cool stuff. So that's sort of the roots of this on-chain economy. I'll kick it off with Armand. How have we progressed since then, and how's Base feed into that?
Yeah, you know, the Coinbase secret master plan, every time I look at it, it still gives me chills. It's pretty unbelievable the foresight that Brian Armstrong had in drafting this and then also releasing it to the world in a public way. I think that that's, a very admirable thing that we're starting to see more of amongst other founders, especially within the crypto space, that transparency and that openness. But I I really tend to err on the side of optimism generally in life. I feel like it's a it's a great way to go about life. But I will say that like we've come very far, but then there's still so many things left to do. And with each cycle, with each day, we see more of that. So even like revisiting that secret master plan and seeing some of the sort of primitive, some of the key like apps that needed to be created, things like identity and reputation that we're still sort of working on, but are we've made a lot of progress since this was published in like 2016, or remittances, which I think with the birth of stable coins, layer twos, and other alternative L1s that make it more affordable to do transactions on chain. I think that global remittance is something that we've also made great strides towards. But then I'm also reminded recently on the Coinbase, the main Coinbase blog, we actually just did a post about how we're improving accessibility of even our own Coinbase.com app and wallet. And just by changing the way that fonts are displayed and having a dark mode, just making it more accessible so that regardless of who you are, you're able to easily read and understand the information that's being displayed. So we still have a long ways to go, but the amount of development and progress that we've made from a developer perspective in terms of the tools that we have and the applications that we have has definitely been very impressive to watch. So in terms of how base actually helps here, I think it really comes down to like a couple of factors. So number one is that accessibility that I just spoke to, but maybe not as much in terms of a user experience perspective, but in terms of the fact that Base is inherently an international product. And to date, what we've done at Coinbase is typically limited by the jurisdictions, the geographies in which we're allowed to operate, whereas Base is international from the start, which is pretty incredible. And the fact that other centralized exchanges, other on ramps are now supporting Base Ethereum, folks can actually choose to transact on Base in so many more countries uh, versus where Coinbase is located. They could actually do so if any on ramp is actually supporting them there, or they could of course transfer assets from Ethereum mainnet or other layer twos to Base. I think the second part is that cost. I know that my father is an immigrant to America. And when he first came here as a young adult, and he was actually sending, remittances back home to his home country of Nepal, it's pretty incredible, like just how expensive those are. So even to send something like $50, it would cost maybe $8 to $10 from Western Union to do so. And to this day, those remittances are still somewhere between $3 and $11 to send $50 back to another country. And it's insane that sending a simple 50 or regardless of the amount of USDC from one wallet address to another on Base, it really shouldn't cost more than 4 or 5 cents, which is a very big unlock. Now, of course, we need to make sure that there is that infrastructure in every country so that people could easily on and off ramp. But I'm just saying that from a cost perspective, we've had orders of magnitude of improvement. And then the last thing that I think, where base truly has a chance to shine and something that we think about is just that more broad, that ease of use. Crypto is still confusing to most people, and I think that's a lot about what we're talking about today with simplifying on-chain finance. And because it's so confusing, I do think that we need to figure out ways and have large groups of people focusing on how do we make it easier to understand? How do we avoid some of the technical jargon that we love, employing in this world? And I'm still sort of looking around at like, who's going to be our Steve Jobs? Perhaps it's going to be like Brian Armstrong, but who's going to be the person who takes and has the ability to build a computer in their garage with a friend, but also has the ability to simplify presentations to 3 words that really matter to most people using. Because as we scale, we can't just speak to ourselves. We have to speak to a broad swath of users. And base, what we're trying to do is get the next billion users on chain. So we're going to have to adopt our language, our user interfaces, and really all of our processes in order to achieve that.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you talk about remittances, especially because I was going to bring up this. I wanted to write my master's thesis maybe 5 years ago on blockchain in developing nations in Africa, to send remittances, and there was just no info. Nobody was doing it. The even like you say, the accessibility, the knowledge base was just not there. So I ended up writing it on mobile money, but I found lots of disappointing conclusions from that. It's so expensive; it takes out a massive portion of what's meant to be sent. So that's crazy that Base is coming sort of full circle in that way. Luke, so you worked at Coinbase in some of these earlier days. We know the secret master plan was written in 2016, which blows my mind every time I look it up. I forget that it's that old. What progress have you seen, like on the whole?
It's a great question. So I joined Coinbase about 5 years ago, and I remember at the time in late 2018, it was we were in the depths of a bear market, so very similar to now. And I think what we all agreed was that crypto had seen some early success in the forms of speculation. People were trading crypto, right? And in the early days, that's pretty much mostly what we had going on. But the reason I joined Coinbase and the reason I was so passionate about it, I never saw the secret master plan immediately, but I remember seeing it a little bit later. And the reason that I was so passionate about it joining Coinbase was I could see that we were moving from this world where people were just trading and speculating crypto into a world where people would actually be participating in crypto networks. And I came to launch Ethereum staking rewards at Coinbase and to build the staking business because what this allowed people to do is not just to buy and sell and trade and speculate on crypto, but also to participate in these networks, to stake their crypto and help secure the network and actually earn more crypto. And that really spoke to me because up until then, we really only had like the most sophisticated or highly funded like Bitcoin miners and Ethereum miners that were able to basically profit off of securing the networks. And so this sort of democratized network participation and allowed everyone that was passionate about crypto or wanted to help participate to stake and help secure these networks. And I think our goal at Coinbase has just been to increase that ability to participate in these networks. Moving from the sort of read web to the read write web, Web one, Web two, and then read write own gave us the with Web three gave us the ability to actually have ownership of value in these networks, to own art, to own digital assets, to own all types of crypto. And I think this ability to participate has been sort of the thing that just seems like a logical extension of that, right? Giving millions of users worldwide the ability to participate directly in these crypto networks, directly through Base and in a decentralized way with wallets, and that's really fascinating to me. So it's been amazing to see this journey that Coinbase has been on and to be a small part of it back in the early days. Yeah, and I couldn't be more pleased progressed since I've left.
Yeah, we've come a long way. Let's talk about a bit who are the beneficiaries of this new economy? So Armand, you said your dad, someone very close to you. It's not people that like we have no contact with. It's everyone. Let's talk a bit about the goals of this new on-chain economy, right? Sound money, financial inclusion, decentralization, beyond, and then who this actually affects.
Totally. Yeah. I think that one thing that we forget here sometimes as we're maybe chasing yield or or doing like our farming rewards is that there's a lot of folks that are going to actually use these technologies for everyday purposes that could feel completely boring to the way that we've operated by having the privilege to operate in a place where we have, trust in our banks and maybe some trust, depending on who we are, in our money supply and things of that nature. So, I think that just having the ability for folks to hedge their life savings that might be held in a currency that is, wildly fluctuating, and put that into either a crypto native asset like Ethereum or Bitcoin, or to say that, hey, I trust that I could keep this in something like USDC, is that's just going to give me a little bit more sort of solace when I think about like where my life savings is stored and how that will sit. So ultimately, it is the global economy that we're looking to, bring onto this world. And yeah, we are limited by factors such as, you know, uh, internet prevalence. But a lot of these things are changing very quickly as the world is increasingly online. And I do think that the next step is bringing these folks on chain.
Yeah, it's such a cool mission, and it's a lot similar to Moonwell's, right? You guys share base and Moonwell a lot of factors, and that's what goes into this sort of partnership. Luke, will you share a bit about the role that apps like Moonwell can play in this, and where Moonwell's background helps us?
Yeah, it's super interesting because we actually have a very similar vision and mission in the Moonwell community, and similar to the Coinbase Secret Master Plan. And I'll just share that with the audience here because I think it's actually very similar. So the Moonwell vision is a world where finance and governance are powered by Web3. And what we mean by that are basically that these tools, this tool of basically being able to have ownership of your own digital life on chain basically gives you the ability to participate in on-chain finance, in on-chain media, all the different ways that you participate, like in the Web 2 world today, will basically be moving on chain. And not only finance is moving on chain, but also governance, the ability to govern the communities and the protocols that we participate in is going to be a key in the future of what on-chain means to people. We no longer have to worry about, or we no longer have to live under, these data monopolies that live in the Web 2 world. And we no longer have to accept that whenever they arbitrarily change their terms of service, that they can, close our account or delete our data or censor our data in different ways. And I think that being able to participate in the governance of these online communities and online ecosystems is going to be just key to unlocking the next level of, you know, participation in these networks. And then our mission is to build the most trusted, professional, and accessible Web3 products. And I think there's a key word in there that I just want to highlight, and that means, well, first of all, trusted is important, but almost more important is accessibility. Trusted, obviously, security is job one, and we want to make sure that these products are very secure and have multiple audits and have good active risk management with other contributors like Gauntlet and Warden Finance, who are contributing active risk management to protocols like Moonwell. But we also want to make sure these protocols are accessible. And to me, that is going to be key to bringing the next billion users on chain. We need to reach people where they are in their native language. We need to make these products a lot easier to understand and to use. And I think throughout the technology lifecycle, you see this happening. The early days of the internet, it was not easy to use at all. Required a computer that was worth thousands of dollars. And yet now most people can get online with a smartphone from anywhere in the world. And so as we think about how do we make these products accessible and bring them to the next billion users, I think that's what's really exciting to me is improving that and just reducing the learning curve, making it easier for people to participate in on-chain finance.
Yeah, let's double click on a few parts of that. The main thing, on-chain applications should match the intuitiveness and functionality of the traditional online world. You think if you log onto Twitter, you don't have to go, find your private key and hope that you remember the password along with your seed phrase and all this stuff, let alone understand those terms. You just log in, username, password. We're seeing a future where that could be a reality, right? So maybe let's talk about Moonwell. What's Moonwell actually doing? We'll start maybe with language support.
Yeah, so we have a really exciting release that just came out yesterday. We've launched internationalization or localization support app. And the first languages we support besides English are Portuguese and Mandarin or Chinese. And we didn't just choose these randomly, but we chose them because Brazil has a population of over 200 million people. This is a huge, thriving economy, and yet 50 million of that population is unbanked or underbanked. So there's a huge opportunity where 25% of the population is roughly it does not have access to normal banking services like they do here in the US. And it's a huge opportunity. Another interesting thing about the Brazilian market is that they already the consumers are very familiar with digital payments because they have this system called, excuse me, called Pix that's been in place for several years now, processing billions of transactions annually. And Brazilian consumers can actually download the Pix app on their smartphone and use it to make payments at merchants and to transact with their banks. And so the Brazilian consumer is very used to using digital payments. And so of large population, 25% unbanked, underbanked, and inability to access traditional banking services leads us to an opportunity to actually leapfrog the traditional financial system. And the way that that will happen is just like in developing countries where the copper telephone infrastructure went right to 5G wireless and mobile devices. I think that will happen with on-chain finance as well, where people will leapfrog, the traditional financial system and go directly to on-chain payments. And it's going to be a huge enabler. And then, of course, Chinese is spoken by over 1 billion people in the world. It's the largest language. 16% of the world's population speaks Chinese. So I think that's another key enabler for bringing on-chain finance to the unbanked and underbanked.
Yeah, that simplification is so important. I remember I used to work as an EMT and I speak Spanish. So I would, tell people, oh, I speak Spanish, I can translate. But then when you get down to these really complex medical terms that I had never even heard in English, it was so difficult to try to figure out any way to get them through in Spanish. So I can imagine it's pretty much identical in blockchain and crypto, right? Yeah, I've noticed in the Moonwell app, the words are toned down. Even for me, it's so much better. There's less like advanced terminology, and some words are even changed, right? Like I noticed health score, which if it drops below 1, you're eligible for liquidation. Now it's credit remaining, which is far more intuitive. Yeah, I like that stuff. I'm seeing it across the ecosystem too, which is cool. So, where do we go from here? Maybe I'll start with you, Armand. Like, what blockers are still in place? Even if we go all the way back to this Coinbase secret master plan. In 2016, he said we're about at the end of stage 2. There's 4 stages total. What big unlocks are on the horizon? What blockers are in place? Start us off.
For sure. I think the I think the first place to start is trust and safety. So, we are currently operating in a way that we're asking folks to be the custodians of their own funds, to essentially be their own banks. But we're all accustomed to, having perhaps a customer support rep, having, fail safes, maybe not necessarily using a password manager for many of our own you know, internet applications that we're transacting on. And we really need to just sort of level up the idea that if we are moving to, from read and write to own, we do have to be owners in this world. So safety is a big aspect. Now, on the Coinbase side, we created something called the Web3 wallet. It's an MPC wallet, meaning that there's, multiple shards to your private key. You no longer need to have a seed phrase or a mnemonic in order to to operate it. So it makes it a lot easier for folks to start transacting, while giving them sort of the convenience, but also the safety of using something like Face ID to sign transactions. So I think that is, a step in the right direction. I see other folks are releasing similar products. Hopefully, we all have, that much more competition in this space, making it as easy to transact securely on chain as it is to initiate a Venmo payment or some other peer-to-peer payment. So I'd say that that's a big part of it. And then I think that the other aspect that I'd like to highlight at least is the regulatory front. We know that regulation has been contentious globally, whereas different jurisdictions are agreeing to sort of different rules in how they interpret crypto, et cetera. I think a big thing that we're doing sort of on our side, and led by Brian Armstrong and the broader Coinbase team and other folks, is the Stand with Crypto initiative. So recently we had Stand with Crypto Day in late September. We went down to DC. I wish I was there, but I just saw the photos and I wish I was there. But they brought over an armored truck. And then this has been like a running theme in some of the marketing activations that Coinbase does, because even the thought of an armored truck as something that we need in order to move money feels so antiquated. It's like back in the day, Wells Fargo horse and carriage with with bandits chasing it. I mean, it's just insane. So they brought down this armored truck. They filled it with all of these. They put stats around it. They filled it with cold brew, and giving out cold brew to bipartisan legislators and representatives that happen to be in the area. They were just urging folks that it's time to wake up to who's using crypto. There's 52 million Americans, and by all means, crypto is important globally, but regulation in the United States is going to make a significant difference in how we all operate. And how the U.S. continues to harbor innovation, here. So just letting folks know that there's 5 times more people who use crypto than those who own electric vehicles, despite electric vehicles being, a very important hot topic of today. There's 3 times as many people who use crypto than those who belong to a union. So if you even go to standwithcrypto.org, you could actually see a really, interesting leaderboard of folks who've donated. I know that Moonwell is on that list, so thank y'all for being large proponents of this. But also you could actually see that crypto is a bipartisan issue that has folks from both sides of the aisle very excited about supporting it. I think politicians need to see that there's a clear source of jobs, there's a clear source of innovation, and of course that this means a lot to a lot of Americans. And we know that from polling that Americans in key states, right, that they are supportive of crypto. So it's exciting to see that. If you want to join in, obviously just go to standwithcrypto.org. Mint a shield, of course, right? Show your support. Put a shield into your X bio if you choose to do so, and more so than anything else, if you don't have the funds to mint a shield or do anything of that nature, just please use standwithcrypto.org to let folks and let your local legislator know that crypto is meaningful to you, and it's meaningful to to other people that even if they're not writing in.
Yeah, it's so important for us to write to our politicians and call in because I think a lot of us fall into this trap of just, participating online and, tweeting angrily into the cloud, right, at our politicians. But I really think phone calls and letters matter. And, you know, 52 million crypto owners in the United States, I think, we want to make our voices heard. It's really important, especially when we have some regulators that are pretty hostile in the current environment. But I agree that a lot of these things are going to improve. And I'm pretty excited about some of the technology that's going to come in the next, several months and years to come. And specifically, there's a couple areas that are really exciting to me. For example, up until now, the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store have really been gatekeepers and have not allowed a lot of crypto apps or on-chain finance, excuse me, on-chain finance apps into the App Store. And this has created a lot of friction for users that need to onboard. But I think that this is going to change because regulators are starting to, demand that Apple and Google allow side loading of apps. And we're also starting to see new apps like FriendTech that are able to adopt architectures that don't require being loaded in the App Store. So, for example, FriendTech can actually install their web-based app directly to your home screen, and then you can get push notifications. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for technology to improve, both in the app stores themselves and as well as the ability to bypass those app stores and go directly to consumer. And then we see new wallet technologies like Privy and Turnkey and others that are allowing people to basically sign transactions using the secure enclave on their phone or their device. And with passkeys and some of the new technology, I think this is going to be a huge unlock because we really want to get to a world where when people are using on-chain finance, they shouldn't have to think about backing up their MetaMask seed phrase. They shouldn't have to think about, how do I securely store my funds? This should all just be taken care of for them in a seamless way where they can use their mobile device. And so the technology of, account abstraction, the ability to basically sign sign transactions with the private key stored in a secure enclave on your device, and the ability to bypass some of these restrictive app store policies, I think is going to be a key enabler for on-chain finance in the near future. And we'll move, this will help us move sort of beyond this like dial-up internet era where it was really expensive to get online into more of an easy democratic era where anyone can get online with a smartphone. And I'm pretty excited about that. I think the learning curve is going to be improved quite a bit as well once we take care of some of these things. And then another thing that I'm pretty excited about is interoperability. So we saw this happen in the early days of the internet, where in the early days of the internet, basically a lot of people would go to the office, you would have a local email server, but your local email server could only communicate within your office and you couldn't communicate with others on other office networks. And it wasn't until the 90s that we really created internet email where we could interoperate and we could send email to each other no matter which office you worked in. And I think the same thing is true of Ethereum networks today, where we have all of these different Ethereum layer 1 and layer 2 networks, and they're not very good at talking to each other yet. Bridges and message passing systems are very immature. So this is maturing rapidly with technologies like Circle's CCTP that are allowing USDC to basically transfer between Ethereum networks in a very frictionless way. And so, Armand, love to hear more about, how some of these technologies are going to enable on-chain finance. But I see a world where in the coming years, you no longer have to think about which Ethereum network you're on. You'll just be part of the super chain, and you'll be able to transact with anyone on any network and send payments to anyone on any network without really thinking about, am I on like the Verizon network or the T-Mobile network, right? And I think this is going to just happen naturally. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more here. There's so many new technologies, whether it's like Circle's CCTP for the minting and burning of native USDC, cross-chain, which is something that we are very lucky to have live on the base testnet right now. So I'm excited for that to progress further and be released on mainnet. And then there's also Chainlink doing CCIP, which is their means of actually transferring tokens cross-chain. Obviously, we have so many other like third-party bridges, whether it's Wormhole, Layer Zero, Axelar, et cetera. All these folks in tandem are coming up with like different solutions to some of the same problem, which is how do we transfer these assets cross-chain easily? And then I think that the bigger unlock is going to be how do we then abstract chain altogether? Um, so, we talk about account abstraction right now in its earliest forms as, paymasters for subsidizing gas, perhaps, or making it easier for a user to perhaps use any token that they have in their wallet as the native gas token of whatever network or chain that they're on. But I do think that this evolves into just more broadly that like the difficulty of crypto abstraction. I'm not sure if we're gonna have a little fun acronym for that one, but uh, it goes back to that what I was saying earlier of like who will end up being that product leader, that Steve Jobs type figure to take away these aspects that are complex, and then from an on-chain finance and more specifically a DeFi standpoint, I think that it becomes very interesting when we think about shared liquidity hubs, knowing that any new protocol and some calculus that you probably have to do, Luke and team, whenever you're releasing on a new network is, how do we ensure that there's enough liquidity on this new spoke in order to make for a meaningful user experience? Because we know without depth of liquidity, it's not as fun to transact. It's not as efficient to transact if you have like high slippage or inability to access specific tokens or other assets, et cetera. So yeah, I mean, like whoever is able to, you know, abstract that away, or if there's a shared sort of liquidity layer, these are the things that are really going to unlock and move us away from, I guess, some of the tribalism that we see with new chains launching and people sort of maybe wearing the jersey of a specific chain or network and pretty much thinking um, single-sided in that way, to just realizing that this is just the on-chain economy, and the same way that you wouldn't really think about a wire transfer to a different bank as being competitive. You just think of it as part of the traditional financial system. Perhaps we could extend that thinking to on-chain finance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds amazing. I think one of the things we've been building in the Moonwell community over the last several weeks is a new solution called temporal governance. And what this allows us to do as a community is it allows us to govern our Moonwell protocol on multiple Ethereum networks. So we were able to launch on Base and activate the protocol through cross-chain governance. And we're using some of these newer technologies like wormhole general message passing layers to actually send secure messages from one Ethereum network to another. And we're using this for the purpose of on-chain governance, so that our community can govern the protocol no matter where it is and no matter which Ethereum network it's on. But I think that it's only natural that this evolves into other technology like a liquidity layer that you mentioned, because I think this would be a key unlock to be able to automate liquidity movements between Ethereum networks as well in a more dynamic way. Because as you mentioned, um, having lots of liquidity is actually key to enabling a lot of on-chain financial use cases. For example, we know that if in ecosystems with high liquidity, you'll pay less slippage and fees for trades, and you'll also have access to borrowing crypto at lower interest rates. And I think those two things, like lower fees and lower slippage and lower interest rates for borrowers, actually really unlock a lot of on-chain finance use cases. And you know, just like you want to, if you're using a bank or a traditional financial institution, you want to choose the one that has like the highest savings account interest rate. You want to choose the ecosystem that has the most liquidity for similar reasons. And I think those economies of scale will come to play once we have better technology that can kind of automate that liquidity layer. So I'm pretty excited about where things will take us in the future.
Yeah, me too. I want to cap us off maybe just about scaling Ethereum as a whole. So Base and the OP Labs team are coming together to do this, right? So we had a big unlocked with EIP 4844. Maybe we can talk about what that means, both maybe on like a higher level and also for what that means as like me as a Ethereum user.
For sure. Yeah. Let's dive into proto dank sharding. This is my number one reference example of the confusing terminology of the on-chain world. But let's talk about 4844 in real terms. And it's just ultimately the ability to lower gas fees for folks to transact. That's really all it means. It means that we could lessen the fees and increase the number of folks who then could afford the fees to transact. I think it's very exciting to think about getting fees down to a point where it's so low that it's almost or could be free. And if that happens, I do believe that the first sort of layer two, the first chain that's able to do that will experience some sort of like Jevons paradox where there's so much usage that perpetuates itself and it becomes, at least for the time being, until there's broader technology to scale this out, it becomes the most usable chain that exists. So hopefully we could experience something like that on base here, and I think that it makes it very exciting to know that regardless of where we land in that pursuit, we do have folks that are contributing to the progression of 4844, from the Coinbase side, from the OP side, and of course many other individual contributors across the ecosystem. And to me, that's just very special that we have folks that are, on the Coinbase payroll that are contributing to, to the development of something that will impact all of us equally. So that's it's awesome to see.
It is really great to see that investment in technologies like proto-dank sharding. I mean, to talk about it really specifically, and to use concrete numbers, if we look at transaction payment networks today, like Visa, which is the popular example everyone loves to use, Visa, according to their documentation, has the capacity to execute more than 65,000 transactions per second. With proto-dank sharding, Ethereum should have the capacity to process more than 100,000 transactions per second. So this improvement will allow Ethereum and all the L2s to combined process more transactions per second than Visa. And so I think that's a huge milestone. And as part of the Ethereum community, we should all be proud of where we've come and how far we've come. And it's only with the investment of large players like Coinbase that we're able to make some of these, significant improvements. But I think this isn't live yet, and of course, today we need to reduce payments. And so the state of things as they are today is that if you're using Moonwell on Base today, you can expect most of the transactions, like lending or borrowing, to cost about 4 cents per transaction. And if we're using a DEX most people use a DEX aggregator like 1inch, or you use a meta aggregator like DeFi Llama, and those swaps typically cost about 15 to 20 cents. So we have a ways to go, but proto-dank sharding will dramatically decrease that. And from our research, we believe that in order for online payments to really take off and be successful in developing countries like Brazil and parts of Asia, we think that it'll be ideal if online transactions or on-chain transactions are less than 1 cent per transaction. So hopefully we'll be able to get there in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to the beginning of the space when Armand's talking about his dad sending remittances that cost, $10 down to 1 cent, that's really crazy numbers. Awesome, guys. Well, what's key takeaways here? I mean, the future of on-chain finance, not only are we trying to simplify it, but it is being simplified in front of our eyes, which I think is really exciting stuff. I'll shout out temporal governance. one more time that Moonwell's creating. Luke, can you tell us about patient optimism, red or public goods funding round coming up?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Cool Horse Girl. Yeah. So temporal governance is an open source governance framework that the Moonwell community has contributed as a public good to the broader ecosystem. So if other protocols or other online communities, on-chain communities would like to govern their protocol or their community on multiple networks, we'd encourage you to reach out and we'd love to talk to you about temporal governance and help you deploy it and use it. The temporal governance has actually had two audits by both Halborn Security and Code Arena. So it's a well audited, secure solution for cross-chain governance. And we'd love to see other online communities that might want to adopt it or use it as a public good. And we're going to submit a grant application to Optimism's retroactive public goods funding round three. The grant applications are due Monday, and voting, I believe, will start in early November. So if anyone here on the call today or on the space today is a member of the Optimism community and is voting in that, we'd love to have your support for our grant application. But more than that, we'd love to hear from other excuse me, other builders that want to use this. Excuse me. And yeah, just Armand, I don't know if you want to mention anything else about the Optimism retroactive public goods funding. I think it's a fantastic way to fund projects that have actually provided public goods and useful ecosystem and infrastructure
Yeah,
components.
I absolutely. Thank you, Luke. I am so happy that you're applying for Retro PGF. I think temporal governance is an incredible addition to, just more broadly the OP stack and any of the teams that could actually use and benefit from it. From my side, I'm very happy to share that, base deployments are eligible for Retro PGF. So if you go to retropgf.com, you can learn a little bit more about public goods funding and how that operates. It is a little bit of a departure from traditional grants programs in that it really looks to measure utility and benefit that something has provided to the network instead of potential for that. And I love the construct of this because it ensures that we're rewarding the teams that have had made the greatest progress towards simplifying everything that we're doing, including on-chain finance across the OP stack. So please, if you're a builder in the audience, I know a lot of folks here are, check that out, see if your project is eligible, and be sure to submit an application. Only other shout out from my side is to, as I was mentioning earlier, check out standwithcrypto.org. Now is the time to make sure that our voices are being heard. Especially as, at least for those of us in the States, next year we're moving into another big election year over here. And it's very important, regardless of who we're supporting, to make sure that they know where we stand when it comes to crypto and the new on-chain economy.
Amazing, guys. Well, Luke, Armand, thank you guys so much for your time. I'll shout out one more time here. If you're interested in Moonwell, go check out our Discord, discord.gg/moonwellfi, or check out moonwell.fi online. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. This was so enlightening, even for me. Like, no matter your novice or experience, this is big stuff. So I'm excited to have done this. I'm sure it'll live on. If you want to learn more about temporal governance, check out Moonwell's almost recent tweet, one of their most recent tweets. We have a Mirror article all about it. We'll see you soon, guys. Happy Moonwell Radio 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Armand. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.